Hi everyone, welcome to the Bootleg post Blue Cross Bowl weekend. Our Bootleg is sponsored every year by the Farm Bureau Health Plans. I thank them each week for their sponsorship. Of course, we can't do these shows without their support. Joined by our statewide team, or at least the majority of our statewide team. It's been a long weekend for some, so we all may not be on, and some of us may not be coherent. But guys, we made it. 9 championship games were played. We had 9 winners, 9 runners-up. I didn't think we'd make it, but we did. We're going to start with the Division II Single A Davidson Academy. They won their 3rd straight state championship, 53-35 over USJ in a rematch of a year ago. It's kind of a theme we're going to see at times this weekend. Repeat champions, 3-peat for Davidson. Of course, that's their last championship they'll have in D2 Division II Single A, at least for the next 2 years, where they'll be bumping up to Division II Double A for 2021 and 2022 at least, because of their enrollments. I'm going to start with Michael Odom. I know you watched that game. Jackson's your team. What was your thoughts on the game first?
You know, what's most impressed me about Jonathan Quinn these past 2 years is the halftime adjustments he's made. The last 2 years, USJ has been ahead at halftime, and Davidson has found a way in the second half to make the adjustments to dominate. I thought USJ in the first half played really well. They played well defensively. They shut down Griffin Sweeney. But in the second half, Sweeney absolutely went off, was unstoppable, and kind of led them to a 3rd straight state championship. So I think you've got to look at what Quinn did at halftime the last 2 years of why Davidson was able to win those games.
I'll tell you what they did. They started getting the ball to Griffin Sweeney. I mean, the kid ran with a passion, I thought, in that game. 26 carries, 284 yards, 4 touchdowns. If I'm Dwayne Alexander, the Tennessee Tech coach, I'm offering him there right there on the spot. I mean, I'm calling him up, the next night and say, you got a spot here at Tennessee Tech. Why? Well, this year he ran for 284 yards. A year ago, he ran for 285. So either he likes Tucker Stadium or he really matches up well against USJ. And I think he did have over 200 yards the first meeting, so there may be something to it. But, he's a baller when it comes to the state championship games. That's 2 big games for Griffin Sweeney. Jared Vitodo, his first state championship game as the starting quarterback. At Davidson Academy, 14 of 19 passing, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a couple bright spots for USJ. Andrew Smith, 16 of 30 passing, 226 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. And then Tyke Tabor, one of the best names of the weekend, 6 catches, 140 yards, 3 touchdowns. Great performance by Davidson Academy. Things now get a lot tougher going to Division II AA. Why? Because that's the game we're going to talk about next. CPA beats Lipscomb Academy. They avenged their lone loss of the regular season. They beat the Mustangs 35-28 in what I believe was the best game of the weekend. Trent Dilfer gave CPA credit for that, what he considered a championship-like drive, called it like a Patriots-type drive. He got the ball with a little over 9 minutes and ran it down to about 2 or 3 minutes or so left in the game, and scored on a short touchdown pass, Cade Law to Cade Reynolds. Big. Very contrasting styles. I think everyone that saw that game would agree. You had CPA running the football 72 times for 424 yards in the game, and then you had Lipscomb. Quarterback Luther Richardson, 17 of 23, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns. Lipscomb carried the ball like 11 times for 53 yards. Of course, they had a Mr. Football semifinalist, Alex Broom. Couldn't get him the ball. I think he still went over 100 yards with all-purpose yards. But they did a good job slowing him down as far as CPA did. Langston Patterson, 34 carries, 191 yards. Cade Law was the MVP, 25 carries, 170 yards, 1 touchdown. Then he also had 36 yards passing and another touchdown. Very, very, very grueling game on the ground. It was a very, contrast of styles. I know Aaron Torres watched that game. Aaron, what were your thoughts?
As I saw that drive going, I was convinced that CPA was going to win that game. I just didn't see how Lipscomb could stop CPA in that drive. I thought the game might go to overtime and CPA would win it in overtime, but then CPA forced that turnover at the end of the game.
It was incredible. I mean, Lipscomb Academy couldn't stop them. I thought Lipscomb Academy did a really great job of kind of scoring when they needed to. I know CPA dominated time of possession, but when Lipscomb Academy scored, they did it quickly. They really made it a game after it looked like maybe CPA would run away with it early. And then that last drive, like you said, like Trent Dilfer said, I mean, that's a New England Patriots type drive that Cade Law led him on, and that's why he was the MVP of the game. He just had a heck of a game.
Moving to Division II, AAA, Holly 44, MUS 0, one of 2 shutouts we had in this of the weekend. McCauley had 23 first downs. MUS only had 7. BJ Harris from McCauley, I think he's going to Missouri, 24 carries, 173 yards, 3 touchdowns. MUS had 5 interceptions in that game. Kari Thompson, Mr. Memphis, what happened?
MUS wasn't able to establish the run. We saw that early, and then that forced Edwin Chai to pass. And you know, Edwin had one of those nights where he threw 4 interceptions. You know, it wasn't entirely his fault. The offensive line has to protect him. The receivers have to get open. But you know, it was just not a great performance by the MUS offense. But we also have to mention that, you know, obviously McCauley's Missouri commit, BJ Harris, went to work and had a great game. MUS's Missouri commit, Gavin McKay, was out. He missed the game with a broken collarbone, so that was a big injury that hurt the Owls for sure.
And didn't they also have another player out as well?
Right, DJ Brown. He's a linebacker going to Charlotte. So they were missing 2 D1 guys, which, as you guys know as high school writers, that's big for any high school football team when you can miss 2 FBS caliber players on each side of the ball.
You know, I thought probably the you could call it a turning point if you want to, but and you know, MUS had the ball there inside the 5-yard line. They were already trailing 21-0, but they needed that. It was late in the first half. They needed to score, get back in the game, get some momentum going into halftime, and maybe it's a different game in the second half. But you know, they had the ball there, 1st and goal inside the 5-yard line, and like Kari said, they couldn't really rely on their run, so they tried to throw it. And that pick was I think the 3rd pick of the game at the time, with about a little over 5 minutes before the half. And that killed that drive, that opportunity to score, and then McCauley came down and scored on the other end. So that, to me, sort of summed up the night for MUS.
Moving into Division I for the rest. We're going to go 1A. Fayetteville upsets, and I'll say that upset South Pittsburgh 20-14. None of us thought that game was going to happen. South Pitt has the tradition. Fayetteville's only in their like 8th year, but they pull off the big win. KJ Jackson, 30 carries, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns. Of course, he had the game winner with 3:08 left when he scored on a 29-yard touchdown run. And I thought they did a good job keeping Hunter Frame in check. Of course, he's the Mr. Football finalist at South Pitt, probably one of the favorites. He had 23 carries, 94 yards. I don't believe he had a touchdown in the game, so he did a great job of bottling him up. Notice they did a really good job at times of making South Pitt run east to west. That gave their defense time to kind of either get them out of bounds on the sideline or corral them. So I thought they did a good job on that. Joe Spears, I know you watched that game. What's your thoughts?
I was really impressed by the Fayetteville defense. I mean, they limited South Pitt to 256 yards of offense, like you kind of said. Hunter Frame actually got an interception earlier in the game that set up South Pitt's first touchdown, but they limited him to 94 yards, no touchdowns. And then KJ Jackson, he's only a freshman, and he did what he did. He hurt his knee, I believe, before half. Wasn't sure how he'd play in the second. He came out looking fine. He scored that insane touchdown run on 4th down that put Fayetteville ahead. And then South Pitt had a really nice drive going there at the end. Looked like they might either tie the game or take the lead because Fayetteville went for 2 instead of kicking the field goal that would have put them up by 7. I think they drove down to South Pitt drove down to Fayetteville at 12, I think. But in the end, the pass was incomplete. But I thought behind CPA Lipscomb, this was the best game of the weekend. And KJ Jackson's going to be a name to really keep an eye on these next couple of years.
Moving on to 2A. Peabody 3-peat, 35-13 over Meigs County. Of course, that will be the last AA title they win for the next couple of years. They're moving down to 1A. Kalik Ganaway, 21 carries, a little over 90 yards, almost 100 yards there. Dragon Vaughn, I think, was the headliner. 19 carries, 90 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then for Meigs, Logan Carroll, 18 carries, 85 yards, and a touchdown. And Mr. Football finalist Will Meadows, 24 of 79 carries, 1 touchdown. Of course, the Ganaway kid is also a Mr. Football finalist. I want to start with Joe Spears. You were there covering that game. What were your thoughts there?
Peabody really cemented itself as the class of 2A. Really just kind of a dominating performance. Meigs, at one point, it was 28-14. They looked like they might cut into the Peabody lead. Peabody immediately just responds with the drive, or 28-13. Peabody responds with the touchdown drive of their own, really to just seal the game. And Shane Jacobs told me after the game, you know, like, every championship win is different. This time we had to really hold our own. I think he kind of maybe didn't take enough credit for the performance that his team had. I mean, out of the last 3, this might be the most impressive. That's saying something considering the last 2 teams that have won a state championship for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think Peabody's defense has always been something that's set the tone in games. This year they've only given up about, going into the championship game, it was like 7.3 points per game. You know, they lost so much from last year, and so many people thought that this would be a rebuilding year. But their offensive line was senior laden, and they have been the leaders on the field. As you know, sophomore quarterback Sam Driggers, and then you have Kalik and Malik Ganaway, who are juniors. The line being senior laden has allowed those skill players to develop throughout the season and to kind of find their spot and find the way to excel. And
Alcoa just won another gold ball. 6th straight state title. I don't think you ever get tired of championships. 35-0 over Milan. Ahmad Sankey, 78 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Caden Buckles, kind of a newcomer to the lineup. 19 of 24 passing, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns. Milan just did not get anything going offensively. It was a long day. And when you look at the stats, and Alcoa had 21 first downs and Milan only had 4, you know you got a lopsided score, and that's what we saw here. So, Aaron Torres, what is your analysis, and then we'll go to Michael Odom.
My analysis was that Milan couldn't get anything going offensively against Alcoa's defense. They didn't get a first down. Milan did. Milan didn't get a first down, I think, until like late in the second quarter. I thought that the game could be close after Milan forced a turnover, I think an Alcoa fumble, and they were covered in Alcoa territory, and they really needed a score there to make the game close. And Braden Anderson from Alcoa ended up intercepting a pass near the goal line, giving Alcoa the ball back, and that was, I think, the closest Milan ever came to scoring a ball. Caden Buckles, he was at Catholic last year, and then he transferred to Alcoa. The game against Milan, the Blue Cross Bowl game, was only his 3rd playoff game ever. He became eligible in the quarterfinals against Gatlinburg Pittman. That was his first career start, his first career playoff game ever. And he really tore it up in the playoffs. I mean, he won the Blue Cross Bowl MVP over Milan. And he's only a junior, so he'll be a senior next year. So Alcoa, I mean, I can't see them. I don't know who's going to beat them in 3A because they're staying in 3A. Milan is moving up to 4A, I think, right?
Yeah.
So I don't exactly know who's going to really contend with Alcoa. Maybe Covington. But there is a 99.9% chance Alcoa will be the 7-time state champions by this time next year.
Aaron's right. Alcoa's defense was dominant. That was the most impressive part of this game, is just the way Alcoa's defense didn't allow Milan to get anything going. And, you know, if you look back a year ago, it was 368 days prior that Milan had hired Carl Diffie to come in and take over this Milan program that had kind of limped through the 2019 season, lost in the 2nd round of the playoffs. There wasn't much positive going on. And in 1 year, he's really turned that program around and made them a contender to get to the state championship game, pulled off a big win against Pearl Cone. So to get to the game was kind of the big prize for Milan. Didn't come out the way they wanted, but I know the Bulldogs are proud of getting there after last season.
4A, where Elizabethton defeated Haywood 41-14. This was a repeat performance. Again, if you're keeping track, there's another repeat. And I just thought that Elizabethton has been so dominant all year with Bryson Rollins and Parker Hughes there. Bryson Rollins, 9 of 13 passing, 172 yards. The Hughes kid at 5 catches for 75 yards and 1 touchdown. 8 carries for 66 yards and a touchdown there. Joe Spears, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I saw Elizabethton last week against Nolensville, and after that game, I thought it might be hard for Haywood to slow that offense down. I thought Haywood's defense, after that first quarter where they fell down 21-0, I thought they really responded well, though. In the second half, I think they outgained Elizabethton. So, but at one point in the second half, Haywood's driving to score, maybe cut the lead down to 2 possessions. They fumble it, and Jake Roberts takes it back for the touchdown. 2 plays later, he takes an interception back for a touchdown. So it really turned the tide of the game. I think Haywood offensively really struggled. Defensively, I think the Tomcats played as well as they could after that first quarter. Granted, the firepower that Elizabethton has. So that senior class really kind of has been the most accomplished in school history for Haywood. 2 state championship appearances, 4 straight semifinal appearances. So nothing to hang their heads about. They were obviously disappointed, but Elizabethton's just turned into a powerhouse there, and they showed why they've won 30 in a row now.
Gotta highlight Jake Roberts. I mean, it's rare enough to get a defensive touchdown in a championship game. This kid got 2 in 1 minute. I mean, and the fumble return was 82 yards. That's the longest in TSSAA Blue Cross Bowl history. So, you got to shout out that performance. Obviously, as Joe was saying, the offense did its thing. And it was just a dominant performance for Elizabethton.
Moving to 5A, Summit, year after finishing runner-up to Knoxville Central, they beat Oak Ridge 28-7. Destin Wade, of course, the MVP of that game, 7 of 10 passing, 135 yards and a touchdown, 14 carries, 93 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that game. Of course, Brady Pierce also had a big game as well. Joe Spears, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I thought Summit would come out firing after how they played these last couple of weeks with wins over Beach and Henry County. They did exactly that. They scored. They jumped out to what I believe was a 14-0, 21-0 lead before Oak Ridge finally got on the board. The Summit defense was dominant. They really played well. Destin Wade did his thing, but then the offense kind of went stagnant there in the second half. They would drive into Oak Ridge territory, but penalties killed them. They had, I think, 16 for almost 200 yards in the game. But luckily for them, Brady Pierce and the Summit defense. Brady Pierce was really kind of an unsung hero on this team. He had 2 touchdowns in the game, a 36-yard, or not 36-yard reception, but a long reception touchdown in the first half, and then the game-clinching pick 6 there in the fourth quarter to start the quarter. And just another dominant performance by Summit. A heck of a way to close out their time in 5A before they move up to 6A next year. And they get Destin Wade to do what he does. Just a great performance overall by the Spartans.
Aaron Torres, go ahead and talk about Oak Ridge. I think Oak Ridge next year will be the largest 5A in the state as far as enrollment goes. And but talk about the Oak Ridge side of things.
I had Oak Ridge, looking at it now, I had Oak Ridge 5. So before the season started, I thought that Oak Ridge could make a deep playoff run. They started off pretty rough. They were 2-3, I think midway through the season, and then they ended up making it, winning off 8 straight games, and making the Blue Cross Bowl for the first time since 2005. And in the game, they just had a lot of trouble getting any offense going. Kendall Jackson, who's their star running back, who has an offer from Tennessee and Duke, he only rushed for 43 yards, and Summit just made it really, really hard for him to run the ball. Mitchell Gibbons, their quarterback, he was under pressure pretty constantly throughout the game. Oak Ridge did have a chance. I think it was 21-7 in the third quarter. And on the 4th down in the third quarter, Mitchell Gibbons was able to throw a pass to Preston Turner in the end zone, and the pass ended up getting I think, tipped right before it hit Preston Turner's, or Preston Turner was able to get his hands on it. But the pass was kind of tipped. So if Preston Turner had caught that, it would have been a 21-14 game in the third quarter, and Oak Ridge would have had the momentum. It's just, it was just a bad, I guess, quarter and a half. The first quarter and a half, it was a really bad quarter for Oak Ridge. It's probably not their best quarter of football ever since in the playoffs, which is disappointing. And next season, I mean, they're losing a lot. Mitchell Gibbons, their quarterback, he's a senior. He's graduating. They're losing their top defensive end. They're losing their top safeties. Kendall Jackson will be a senior next year, so they'll have their top running back back. He rushed for over 1,000 yards this year, even though he had a couple nagging injuries earlier in the season. I don't know how they'll reload for next year, who they'll have coming in for their skill players, who they'll have at quarterback next year. But I was really I thought that Oak Ridge could make it a close game, and it just didn't happen that way.
Curious if you have your top your poll. You had Oak Ridge 5. How many 5A teams did you have ahead of them? Because I know you were probably had the most top 5A teams around.
So the two 5A teams I had ahead of them were Central, who were the two-time defending state champions. I had them number 2. And I had West number 4.
Last game of the weekend, Oakland, 56-33 over Brentwood. It got out of hand, but personally, I thought this was one of the more entertaining. If you like offense, this was one of the more entertaining games of the weekend, I thought. I mean, if you would have told me there would have been 89 points combined with both defenses and stuff, I would have said you're crazy. But Jordan James, 23 carries, 226 yards for Oakland, 6 touchdowns, 1 score away from tying Jalen Hurd's state championship record of 7 touchdowns in a game. Antonio Patterson, a quiet 176 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns for him. Kate Granzo for for Brentwood, 20 of 32 passing, 186 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He left that game with an injury. Told me he sounded like his left arm, the arm shoulder went out of socket there, and he went back in, and he didn't have any strength there, and just told me that he wasn't going to help his team being in that much pain. So Davis White came in there, 5 of 9 passing, 124 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Of course, he's their quarterback of the future. But Kevin Creasy, 2 state titles at Oakland in 3 years, and Oakland's first ever perfect season, 15-0. If anything, interesting to have anyone have a perfect season with the COVID and everything going on. But big performance from them. Going to start with Aaron Torres. I think you watched that game. What was your thoughts?
My thoughts is that Jordan James was unstoppable. I mean, it seemed like he just couldn't be tackled. Mm-hmm. He would break off some runs, or he would get to the line of scrimmage, and it just seems like when he got to the line of scrimmage, you just couldn't tackle him, and all of a sudden he'd go off for an 81-yard touchdown or a 59-yard run. I thought Brentwood would make it a close game. I mean, it was 7-6. Brentwood did score in the first quarter. They ended up missing, I think, the extra point, right? 7-6. And they didn't score in their first meeting earlier in the regular season. So I thought it could have been a fairly close game, and then all of a sudden Oakland goes off for, I think, two straight touchdowns or 3 straight touchdowns after forcing a couple of turnovers, and after that it was just like that was it. That was the rest of the game. Even if Brentwood doesn't have those turnovers, I don't know if the game is any close. Obviously the game is probably a bit closer, but I don't know if Brentwood even really has a shot, just because Jordan James just couldn't be stopped.
We talk about Jordan James. Antonio Patterson had himself a game too. He had over 170 yards and 2 touchdowns of his own. So this Oakland rushing attack it's hard to stop. It's nearly impossible to stop. Nobody's been able to do it this year. Cecil thought that Brentwood would be able to put up some points. Brentwood, you can't take away from what they did this year and in this game. To put up the most points anybody's put up on this Oakland defense this year, that says something. I thought their freshman quarterback was really impressive too when he came in. He's going to be a guy to really keep an eye on. But Oakland, they're the class of 6A, and they return a lot of those guys next year. So it'll be interesting to see what they do going forward.
Look in your crystal ball. I'm not telling you guys to give me who you think are going to be all 9 state champions, and I'm not asking for a lot of dialogue, but just maybe 1 or 2 sentences and a couple teams of teams that you think are going to be big-time contenders in their respective class. I'll start off because I'll be the guinea pig. I think we very well could be watching. We could have watched the first of 2 straight CPA Lipscomb championship games. I think both have a lot of stuff coming back. Cade Law, Langston Patterson at CPA, of course, come back with some others. And then you've got Lipscomb will have Broom back, and they'll have a lot of other stuff. So I think there's a good chance we're looking at that again. I think in 1A, I think you got to look at Peabody going up there, going from 2A to 1A. Of course, Alcoa, until someone in 3A beats them, they're the team. They're the class of the field. I will say this: there's been some hubbub on social media saying that Alcoa has no business in 3A. They have a 3A enrollment, and the way our system works, you are determined by your enrollment what classification you are, and until they change that, then Alcoa has every right to be in 3A. That's my soapbox. If they want to look at performance factors or success factors like other states are doing, that's fine, but right now we don't do that in Tennessee. I think in 6A, you're definitely going to look at Oakland coming back. They should be the favorite to win, but don't sleep on Summit. We'll be jumping up to 6A. You got the Wade twins there, Destin and Keaton. And I think those two guys are going to be the 2 big-time factors in a very tough Williamson County League. Brentwood will have to reload a little bit. Ravenwood will be okay. They'll be good. They'll have to find some good pieces, but they've got some pieces there. Those are my thoughts.
Peabody is, I think they should probably be the favorite in 1A, but they would play Fayetteville potentially in that semifinal game. That would be a lot of fun. That Peabody offense and defense against Fayetteville, who also returns a ton of players. Whoever wins that game would probably be the favorite to win 1A. 2A, I think, is a toss-up now with Peabody gone. I think there will be a lot of teams competing with that. 3A, Alcoa. 4A, I do think Milan, despite what they showed this weekend, you return Anthony Brown. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the quarterback and running back positions. But I think they've got a really good shot at competing for that 4A title, especially if Anthony Brown does what he did this year. And then I really want to look at 6A. I think you hit on it there well. Summit, Oakland should be the favorite going into next year with everything they bring back. But Summit, led by the Wade twins, they get Brady Pierce back. They do lose a lot of key guys. Caleb Jolly is one of those guys. But I think Summit is in a really good position to compete for the 6A title. They played a lot of those teams in their region already. You play Independence every year. They played Franklin this year. So I think they have the talent there to make it back to Cookeville despite having to move up a class. And if we get a Summit Oakland game, that should be a lot of fun.
I'm going to start with D2A. The past 2 years, Davidson Academy has been the thorn in the side of USJ. Davidson's gone. I think USJ has a good shot of winning the Division 2A state championship. I think Nashville Christian will probably be their biggest competition. USJ's 0-7 all-time in state championship games, so that next year could be the when they finally pull it out. You look at 1A with Peabody dropping down, you could have a state semifinal between 2 2020 state champions with Fayetteville and Peabody. You've also got McKenzie, who took Peabody to overtime. So I think 1A might be the most competitive in the western half of the bracket next year. In 2A, Westview drops down. Westview's been in a tough region with teams like Covington, Milan, South Gibson. They don't have those to compete against. They're now in 2A. Are teams in 2A going to be able to defend the pass of Tysons? I think Westview could be a sleeper next year. Milan does move up to 4A. You can have Milan and Haywood they'll be in the same region. So you could have a quarterfinal there between two state runner-ups. They're going to play during the regular season, obviously. That could be really an exciting game with what Milan has back and what Haywood's been building. I could see either one of those making a run at the state tournament.
There's probably a couple that I'll hit on. Obviously, the 6A next year is going to be really interesting, like what you and Joe were talking a little bit about with Oakland. I think being the heavy favorite there, but Summit, obviously, what they've shown this year in their ability to get to the state championship, get back to the state championship, and finish the job this year. I think with the Wade brothers returning, that's going to make that 6A very interesting in terms of those two schools. And I still kind of feel like Oakland. I think everybody kind of agrees that Oakland's probably the team to beat there with so much of what they had this year coming back. But like I said, Summit's going to be right there with them. The 4A classification, I think, is interesting as well. I think Springfield, if I'm not mistaken, is moving up to 5A. I believe that's the case. But if without Springfield there, which I kind of felt like could have been the sleeper team this year in 4A, I think that's going to open some things up in that classification, as well. And then of course Davidson Academy moving to their new classification is going to be interesting kind of plot there in Division II. So there's a lot of things I think you could kind of point to going into next year that I think is going to be interesting to kind of see how it plays out. A lot of these teams, a lot of these schools are kind of moving classifications. It's going to give some schools an opportunity to maybe sneak in a state semifinal appearance, a state championship appearance that normally they wouldn't be able to. And then there's going to be some teams that like for instance Alcoa. I don't think anybody's anybody's anticipating Alcoa falling off at any point in the near future. I think they're pretty solidified in 3A. But there's going to be some other teams there that traditionally have been in the state, semifinal state championship games that may drop back a little bit after some movement in these classifications.
Before I talk, I would like to apologize to Mrs. Krieger. Buddy keeps running away from me, so he's not making an appearance today. I also like to apologize to everybody in Oak Ridge. Buddy keeps running away from me, so y'all can't see him today. Very sorry. Look, in 6A, obviously Maryville is obviously the king in 6A here in East Tennessee. They do lose Parker McGill, who was their star running back this year. He rushed for 20 touchdowns, I think, this year, and over 1,000 yards. He graduates. They lose their top linebacker, Lou Birchfield. He's graduating as well. But they do bring back Carson Jones, their quarterback. They bring back DJ Burks, who was their top safety and probably the top safety in the state. He had 9 interceptions this season. So they'll probably be undefeated, if not undefeated in the regular season. Their only loss will probably be to Alcoa. They'll likely make another deep playoff run. Derek Hunt will find a way to have somebody to replace Parker McGill. They'll have a running back that'll come back that he'll find to be productive as well. So I could see them making a run to the semifinals again next year. The question is, with everything Oakland's bringing back, would Maryville be able to beat Oakland in the semifinals? In 5A, Central, they lose Caleb Fortner and Liam Fortner, who were the twin brothers. Caleb, Mr. Football finalist. Both of them are Army commitments. Caleb's the linebacker. Liam is a wide receiver, but also plays on the defense. They have been there since Central won its first state championship in 2018. So that kind of time at Central, where Central just kept making deep playoff runs and kept beating up on teams, is over, for at least for now, I think. So West, they do bring back a lot, and I thought West was gonna win the state title this year in 5A. So West will be very good next year. Oak Ridge, I talked about them a little bit earlier. I'm not exactly sure how good they'll be. They do lose a lot of skill players. So it'll be interesting to see how they look. Powell, they bring back a lot. They bring back Jordan Potts, who's their starting quarterback. They bring back Adarius Redmond, who is their star wide receiver, who has offers from Penn State, Florida, Tennessee, and almost every top SEC school. They bring back Aiden Green. They bring back Jaden Collins, who's their other top receivers. So Powell will be a tough team in 5A as well. In 4A, so what's interesting in 4A, I was looking at the regions just now. South Doyle made the state semifinals in 5A. South Doyle drops down to 4A. So I'll be interested to see if South Doyle can make a deep playoff run in Class 4A. They do lose their top defensive players. They lose Terrell Brown, Noah Myers, and Curtis Young. Or actually, Curtis, I think, is a junior. So Curtis will be back. Noah Myers and Terrell Brown, they're both senior linebackers, and they were two of the best senior linebackers in this area. So I'll be curious to see what South Doyle defense looks like next year. They do bring back Sean Gary, who just kept running over 100 yards and had a lot of 200-yard games this season. So I'll be curious to see what he looks like next year as a senior. Nick Martin, who's their junior quarterback, he'll be back next year. And in 4A, I believe South Doyle will be able to make a pretty deep playoff run in 4A. They'd have to get past Greenville. Anderson County is always good in 4A. And then Elizabethton, who's the two-time defending state champions. I don't know what they'll look like in 4A, but I'll be curious to see what South Doyle looks like in 4A. 3A, Alcoa is winning the state championship next year again. I mean, I'm calling it right now. If they won't, I'm dyeing my hair pink. I mean, it's just, they're winning it all.
Save the clip.
He was gonna shave it, folks. If Red Bank won, he was gonna shave it, and now he's gonna turn it pink. So I think he wants to do something with his hair.
I will also dye Buddy's hair pink. I will dress Buddy up as a reindeer if they lose. I mean, who knows? I mean, I just don't see Alcoa losing next year.
Okay. Gary Thompson.
Man, for me, it's tough to judge 1A through 5A. Y'all know my situation. Shelby County Schools didn't play. So that's tough to gauge. In 3A, we're looking at Covington just because, you know, they're always in the mix at around this time of year. And they got shut down due to COVID. In 6A, I think you got to look at Bartlett. I think Lance Tucker is building a real strong culture there. They're losing Robert Giamo and a bunch of good seniors. But I think that, you know, Coach Tucker is building something since he came over from Alabama. I'm also looking at Whitehaven, because if you take a team that's traditionally that talented and just plays that well at the end of the year, and you give them the hunger of missing a season, I think that might be something special to watch. In D2 AAA, I'm looking at Christian Brothers bringing back Dallin Hayden and Patrick Kudis, who's a lineman whose name is about to blow up on the recruiting trail. Big kid, 6'5", 270. And also, obviously, for D2 AAA, you got to look at MUS as well. No matter what happens, no matter how many injuries, they seem to find a way back to the Blue Cross Bowl since I've been here. The question is, can they win it all?
2020 season, we made it through. I didn't think we'd make it, but 9 state champions, nine runners up. Congrats to all the state champions. Congrats to all the teams that actually made it to Cookeville, and this congrats to everyone that was able to play football. I think we made it through there, and finally I want to give our condolences to Coalfield. Their football coach Henry, died over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are with Keith Henry's family, his friends, that entire community over there, anybody who knew him. They all spoke about what a great man he was. My thoughts are with anybody and everybody over there in that community. It's really sad that he passed away, and I hope that everybody's doing well over there.
That's it. We'll see you next season, and maybe once or twice before then. Until then, you've been watching The Bootleg, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Again, we thank them for their continued support. Thank you for watching our bootleg. We'll see you later.